opposite of what I'm saying, because I'm going to focus on one sector, biotechnology, which is in some ways, is going to be, I think, one of the quintessential sectors to watch. It's the life sciences sector. The U.S. is by far the global leader in this sector. We invented biotechnology industry about 40 years ago. And there's not any other country, including China, that really comes close. So there's some good ones, but in terms of scale and in terms of sophistication, we're still the world leader. Nonetheless, and by the way, this isn't really so much an industry as it is three industries. There's the biopharma sector, which develops new medicines and new technologies to treat diseases. It's biotech ag, so genetically modified organisms. And it's other uses, industrial uses of biotech, including environmental and energy applications for biotech. Each of these sectors is a bit different, but China has ambitions in all three. In fact, in the recently issued 13th five-year plan, China says that they want to build a domestic biotech industry sector by 2020, okay, so it's not long from now, valued at about $1.25 trillion. Right now it's about half a trillion, being generous to them. So they want to grow this industry by $750 billion over the next 3 or 4 years. That's pretty darn ambitious. They've thrown tons of money, hundreds of billions of dollars into the sector in the last 5 years, all aspects of the sector, and you can expect that to continue in the future. Clearly, ultimately, global markets are going to be an objective for China, but I want to come to that in a second. What I want to do is divide the sector up into these two major commercial parts right now, which is the biopharma, and then a little bit talk about biotech agriculture. So when it comes to biotech pharma, on the one hand, currently, you could say that there's some sort of mutuality or complementarity of interest between the U.S. and China. U.S. companies who lead the world want access to the Chinese market, obviously. We have technology to export to them. China, on the other hand, wants technology. Okay, and we can discuss how they might get that. Eventually, they want to access global markets. And one thing I'm going to come back to again and again in this sector is the overlay of global regulatory agencies makes this market a little bit different than others. China cannot just develop technology and get into the United States. There's something called the FDA that they would need to get passed first. Okay, and if you don't know how to work with the FDA, you might be a U.S. partner. There are other regulatory constraints that are going to make that a little bit more difficult for you. However, it seems so. I think ultimately it seems China's objectives are to, as was said, compete with U.S. industry, which is the world leader in global markets. But very clearly, in the short run, they are focusing on the domestic market as a way of fostering their technology, fostering indigenous innovation, and I totally agree with the definition that Rod gave for that. And then eventually, the idea is to create the capacity, the technological know-how, and then eventually go global. There's a problem here. Okay. Can anybody name a Japanese or a Chinese, a Japanese or a Korean biotech company?
Synovian.
Which is?
It's a biopharma company. Synovian, Japanese company.
Right. Okay. What's their global ranking? Okay. There are not world leaders that are either Japanese or Korean companies in this sector. There's some very good technology companies, but they're small. And the Japanese pharma sector is about a tenth the size of the U.S. And that's because they followed a policy of domestic innovation and domestic protection that in some ways copied their success in the IT sectors and in the auto sectors, but signally failed in this sector. And one of the reasons is government-led strategies in the sectors are very difficult to succeed, and I'll explain why. The success rate, even in the U.S., for biotech, which is the most successful industry in the world, is about 10%. 10% from when you get into even clinical trials. So for every product that goes into stage 1 clinical trial, for every 100 products that go into 10 products that go into stage 1 clinical trials, about 1 succeeds, or 10 out of 100, excuse me. Think about leading a government program where your failure rate is 90% and trying to continue to get resources to that. Our sector is run by the market. it's supported by venture capitalists who take risks, and in addition, if the projects fail at early stages, they're incredibly ruthless. Your capital will be shut off, they'll move on to the next project. So to be successful in running a government program, A, you have to be prepared for a 90% failure rate in this sector, and B, you have to be absolutely ruthless with the people who fail at early stages and cut their financing off. This is what it's going to take for other countries to succeed. And the reasons that other countries have been somewhat slower to catch up to the U.S. in this area is because they frankly don't have the vibrant venture capital financial system that supports the U.S. industry. I'm not saying that I want to be complacent about this. I'm just saying that these are things that the Chinese or other governments need to think through. That said, what's been happening in the pharma sector generally over the last 10 or 15 years is this. U.S. industry has been growing rapidly. U.S. sales and revenues in the Chinese market have been growing rapidly. So in some sense, U.S. companies are concerned about rocking the boat. They've been growing at double digits for most of this period, the last 15 years. On the other hand, the market's growing even faster. So our market, what we see is market share in the biopharmaceutical sector shrinking. And of course, that's by design. But as long as you're growing at 8-10% a year, if you're a country manager for a pharma or biotech company in China, your inclination is not to rock the boat too much because you look pretty good to the folks back at headquarters in the U.S. But eventually, you see that the market could end up getting a bit strangled as China promotes its indigenous industry. The specific issues cut across the key areas of interest to our sector. There's regulatory issues with the Chinese. The Chinese drug lag between introduction of new drugs in the U.S. and China is about 5 to 7 years, which is what it was in Japan about 15 years ago. Japan's closed their drug lag. China hasn't. Although this is something they want to improve on because that'll help the Chinese industry too. It's slow for everybody, I should say, right now. Intellectual property, of course, is a big problem and can be a big problem. I won't go into all the details on that. And thirdly, just the healthcare system in general. Keep in mind that the government itself, public agencies are the big procurers of medicines in China, and who are they going to buy from under what conditions? So the real issue across all these sectors is the extent to which the drive towards indigenous innovation is going to lead to explicit discrimination against foreign countries, foreign companies, foreign parties. And I can tell you, yes, there are plenty of examples of that, and I don't have time to go into detail here. I can also tell you that the dialogue that the United States government has had with China and under JCCT and SNED has been quite helpful, in at least raising some of these issues and getting some of them addressed. I don't know that that's true in any fundamental way, but it certainly has helped fight some of the fires that we're facing. Secondly, I want to just quickly switch over to the biotech ag. Darci talked about this a bit, but just to make 4 basic points. One is, as Darci pointed out, there's a huge amount of commerce involved here. So U.S. soybean exports alone to China are in the $10 to $14 billion a year range, which is, by the way, more than all of our exports to Europe for everything, agricultural combined. But the thing to recognize here is that in key sectors, corn, soy, cotton in particular, about 90% of U.S. production is biotech, is genetically modified. And so the issue in China has been regulatory approval of new biotech advancements. And this not only, let me just say, so obviously the commercial implications for the Chinese market, which is huge, are obvious. You know, if you want to develop a new product, a new biotech innovation for soybeans or for corn or for some other biotech product, the potential implications for China are huge. But more importantly, and I think this is something I want people to come and take away with, China currently, there's 9 products or events that have been pending final approval in China for some time, just years. Although we had some success on getting a few approvals, 3 of them a year or so ago. But the issue is this. biotech products are mixed with non-biotech products in global trade. If China does not approve the biotech innovations, U.S. farmers can't plant the innovations here in the U.S. So China can actually strangle global innovation and innovation in the U.S. by not approving that innovation in China. We can't separate out, and just send the innovative soybeans only to U.S. or other markets that approve them and not have them be sent to China. The market doesn't work that way. So if China does not approve the product, it can't really be used. It can't really be implemented in U.S. agriculture. And that's really of what's concerned. So the implications for U.S. innovation go far beyond just simply our access to the Chinese market. And let me just close by saying a word about, what are China's objectives here? Very interesting. President Xi spoke on this specifically in 2013. This is an interesting statement. It's worth reading. We shall be bold in research and cautious in commercialization. The industrialization and commercialization of biotech crops must be careful and steady, strictly follow national regulations. To avoid risks, all safety-related factors should be considered. That's not a problem. The research and development in biotech should be bold and innovative to reach a commanding heights of technology, thus not to have big foreign companies dominate the agricultural biotech market. And you might think that after they do reach the commanding heights, that their cautious attitude towards commercialization might change from what it is right now, because this is exactly what's happening. They are, by the way, I would just say the Chinese people seem to be quite ambivalent about biotech and agriculture, a whole other story. The government really isn't. The government's promoting it, but the government's kind of using this ambivalence about the technology to slow down the approvals while the local industry develops this technology to be continued. One final point I just want to say is that, again, in this area, and thanks to Ambassador Vetter and others in the U.S. government, U.S. Intervention on behalf of the industry has been absolutely critical. We wouldn't have even had the success that we did have. Again, there have been some biotech approvals, at least, over the last several years, and it couldn't have been done. The industry could not have leveraged, despite the fact that the Chinese need our soybeans, we couldn't have leveraged that on our own. So it's a key takeaway in this segment. Thanks.
Okay. I'm bringing up the rear here and representing, I guess, basic materials and commodities manufacturing, differing a little bit from the earlier panelists, but I think it's quite an interesting cross-section we put together here. The global aluminum industry is probably the newest member of a sort of dubious club of material manufacturers and commodities that are facing global structural overcapacity concerns. When you scratch the surface, there are some major differences between some of those industries, and both cause and effect. And so I don't want to overstate the degree to which I can sort of speak to some of those general commodities concerns. We're very definitely a new member of the group, and I'm going to focus a little bit on what's brought us into this field of activity very lately. So I represent the Aluminum Association, which is the trade association for the North American aluminum industry, representing the full value chain from refiners and smelters through remelters and recyclers and also fabricators. And collectively we represent just a little bit shy of 80% of U.S. Aluminum production. That's around 200,000 direct jobs in the U.S., not quite 200,000, I think around 190,000. And 186 billion in direct economic impact for the U.S., about 1% of GDP. Historically, this industry has been loosely aligned as a free trade, pro-globalization aluminum industry. We have both multinationals as well as domestic producers in our membership who have all been aligned on that position, sort of a zero for zero tariff. And have not been very active in the trade realm, and that all changed around 3 years ago, somewhat dramatically. And the reasons for that, there are two main reasons for that. And it's sort of the tale of two industries, really. On the demand side, the demand picture for aluminum consumption in North America is incredible. There have been three major step changes in the consumption pattern for aluminum over the course of this industry since the last century. The first was the advent of the aerospace industry. The second was the advent of the aluminum beverage can in the 1970s. And today it's the major increase of the use of aluminum in automotive applications as the automotive industry shifts to increased use of aluminum in applications to mostly for efficiency reasons. In our recent projections for the industry, we're looking at an almost 30% demand increase for aluminum through the year 2025. And that sets us apart from many other material manufacturing industries who are, if not stagnant, at least just looking at progressive and predictable growth. So in an environment in which you have this incredible demand picture, you would expect, I would assume, any economist would, a tight market as the material industry ramps up to service that demand, and a good picture for the industry. Today, and through 2015 and 16, the industry has operated at or around global aluminum trading prices at the equivalent to the depths of the 2007-2008 economic crash. And so the question becomes why? Well, in the same years that we've seen this growth in demand, and we're expecting this growth in demand in the future, China has gone from producing in the early 2000s around 10% of the world's aluminum to today producing around 60% of the world's aluminum. It's been it's an incredible story of production capacity increases, and much of that, actually, the vast majority of those production increases have gone to service a voracious demand for aluminum within China domestically. But what we've seen in our industry starting in the 2008-2009 time frame was with the softening of the global economy and the softening of demand within China, we saw a production overrun, a capacity surplus within China. Now, in the last few years, that surplus has been around or less than about 5% of Chinese production. And for most global production regions, a 5% overcapacity issue is not a major concern. But when you're talking about 60% of the world's production, that 5% overrun is equivalent to the entire production capacity of North America. And that production overcapacity's impact on the global trade of aluminum is what has led to this depressed trading environment in which we are working in. The cumulative effect of that is that in 2015, the U.S. shuttered 60% of its aluminum smelting capacity in a single year. Now, our economics report that we just updated at the beginning of this year shows that the aluminum industry as a whole in the U.S. has expanded 3% since our last benchmark year, 2013. So there's the central tension within our industry. The fabricating and downstream industry is expanding at an incredible rate, but we're also seeing an incredible contraction in the upstream smelting industry, and we believe that we're starting to see signs that contraction is going to have knock-on effects downstream. So the industry is taking action now to address those issues. So just a couple of other comments about the situation and why we are so laser focused on China if this is a global overcapacity concern. In the years that we've seen this run up in capacity in the Chinese market, we have well-documented evidence that the U.S. industry, as well as most other global production regions, have responded to market signals, and we've seen the normal amount of churn and openings and closings within individual sectors of the aluminum industry globally. I have a great chart that I could have put on screen that would have showed that particular churn for the rest of the world and would have graphed the increase in Chinese production capacity graphed against global economic downturns, softenings in the market surpluses, and what we see is a continued upward trajectory no matter what market signal we're graphing against. The only recent responses to market signals that we have seen is that there does seem to be some response to new smelter openings in relation to energy prices within China. And one of the things I'm not going to talk about today is the particular inputs into the industry. But so where does that leave the industry, or where have we gone as an industry? Let me talk a little bit about what we've done in response and then where we are today, and then I'll stop. First, because we had not been active in the trade arena, we had a sort of unique opportunity as an association and as an industry, and as a policy wonk, it was really interesting to me. We got to create a trade policy strategy from scratch, with no antecedents, very little baggage, a broadly unified industry, and a mandate to address a clearly defined issue. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I bet a lot of you have been doing it for that amount of time. And you don't get those type of antecedents for your activities very often. Our members got to sit down and be very deliberative and to talk about what strategies they wanted to pursue and why. We have several broad-ranging goals and objectives that we want to address, and we have, I think, an enviable unity within the industry that we want to maintain. What we have to do, though, is to address something that has historically been very hard to address, which is a structural overcapacity issue not located within the boundaries of our own country. And to do that, we think that ultimately a negotiated solution between the U.S. and China is something that we have to aim for. Now, to get there, there's a lot of different levers you can pull, and we're trying to do that. And we have to, in the meantime, address the particular impacts of this structural overcapacity on domestic producers, and that does include very acute issues. And so we're taking no tools off, we don't believe we're taking any tools or solutions off the table to get there. I'll skip over a couple of items in the interest of time. I would say that today where we are is that we're deployed on multiple fronts. We have to do the block and tackle of maintaining a trade program for our association and our industry, which includes a lot of legwork, as you're all aware. We're just completing now our interactions with ITC on a 332 investigation that has been an incredibly positive process for our industry that will result in a final report in July. We can't stop there, though. I think we, like many other industries, have a lot of difficulties in documenting exactly what policies on the ground in China are supporting different parts of the industry. We're trying to work in partnership with colleagues within China because no one is hurt more by this overcapacity issue than producers in China, and the cohort of producers who are competitive on the global stage are the ones who are hurt the most. We're looking at trade enforcement in the United States. At the beginning of January, the Obama administration pursued its 16th action at the WTO for a request for consultation. It was for Chinese subsidies for primary aluminum. We're in the 60-day period for consultation right now. We're working closely with the new administration that is not yet in place to see where they're going to go with that activity. We've not ruled out anti-dumping and countervailing duty remedies. And where I would end, I guess, and the question I would have for the room is, as I had said, ultimately we believe that a negotiated solution to this issue is the only way to get at the root problem that our industry is facing, and that everything else is essentially playing whack-a-mole or pass the buck. And I guess my question, and what we're struggling with right now as an association, is what is the prognosis for multilateral negotiations with this new administration or bilateral negotiations with this administration? As we went from 0 to 100 on trade policy, we have been successful as an industry of placing aluminum overcapacity issues at the forefront of U.S.-China dialogue. The question then is what becomes of the dialogue? So we are absolutely ready to work with the new administration in this area. We believe that positive steps can be made in the very short term for us, but we do not know yet where the existing dialogue structures are going or how they will be altered for the new administration. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Charles. That's an excellent question. Does negotiation work or punitive action work? And maybe a combination of the two, I don't know. Anyway, question.